IVM.
BQ Big Decisions, the BloombergQuint podcast that helps you make the right financial choices. I read somewhere that 90% of parenting, especially in the early years, is just thinking about when you can lie down and close your eyes for more than a minute at a time. It's a breathtakingly demanding responsibility, but possibly also one of the most fulfilling ones that you will ever undertake. In the best of scenarios, parents work as tag team partners, filling in for each other when the situation demands it. But life isn't always rainbows and butterflies, and sometimes, as a result of circumstances that could never be foreseen, a parent ends up as a single mom or dad. It's a dramatic shift and one that will require a change in the way one approaches everything, including finances. Thanks for listening in. This is BQ Big Decisions and I'm Mathew. On today's podcast, I'd like to talk about financial planning for the single parent. My guest today is financial educator and registered investment advisor, Mrin Agarwal. Thanks so much for joining me, Mrin.
Thank you, Alex.
It's not an easy topic to talk about, Mrin.
Yes.
But particularly because it's, a dramatic shift in how you approach life.
Absolutely. It's a huge, huge shift, especially for the parent who has the responsibility of the child.
Okay, but hopefully over the course of this conversation, we're going to help somebody in this situation to get a handle on things, assuming they haven't gotten a head start already. Because, the problem is that when you're faced with such a situation, you have to adapt very, very quickly. But having said that, what are the first things that you need to do if you're faced with this situation?
So typically what happens is that, as you said, you need to adapt, but you're only thinking about the present. You stop thinking about the future.
Yeah.
So what can you do better with your present? Well, first and foremost, you have to sit down and budget, because earlier maybe there were two incomes in the family. Earlier maybe one of the partners was a homemaker. So you didn't have those expenses.
Yes.
You didn't have childcare expenses, for example.
Yeah.
So a whole lot of expenses tend to change the moment you become a single parent.
Yeah.
And so you need to get a hang on your expenses, figure out what are your expenses, what are the extra expenses, how are you going to take care of these expenses? And, this is apart from really figuring out how you're going to take care of a lot of other things in your life, right? But how you're going to take care of a lot of things in your life has a direct bearing on your finances.
Yes.
Right? So figuring this piece out first is like the most important part. If there is an increase in your expense, from where is this going to come and how is it really going to impact then your future savings?
In certain situations, life insurance tends to help a little bit in this situation, right? In case there is mortality and in case the partner was covered in life insurance, then that to a certain extent tides over the immediate requirement for finances, right? So therefore, stress again, it's extremely important. You need insurance for unfortunate incidents.
Yes, and you need the right amount of cover because again, people are very underinsured, and that's really because people tend to buy the investment-linked insurance plans where the sum assured is very low. So if you're going to be taking covers of 10 to 15 lakhs, it's not really going to be very helpful to the family.
Yes, we've had a conversation, Mrin, specifically on life insurance, and in fact, the financial planner I spoke to, and I'm guessing that you'll agree with this as well, is he said, get insurance even if you have to sacrifice on your investments to do it.
Yes.
Do insurance first and then think about the investments that you need to make.
Yes. And in any case, term insurance is not that expensive.
Yeah. And he stressed that perhaps term insurance is the best way to go. And I think a lot of financial planners agree with that.
Yes.
All right. So, going forward, what do they do next, right? So hopefully that they've got some aspect of help either from insurance or from, support figures in their life. Because at this moment, family becomes extremely important.
Yes.
So how do they do it?
Yeah. Family does become your biggest support system. But at the same time, so again, you have to just come back to your expenses. With expenses increasing, it's also important that you try to get rid of your loans as soon as you can.
Understood.
Because, your entire financial situation changes. Of course, having an emergency fund. For example, if you have your parents with you, and there's a medical situation, how are you going to take care of that situation, right? So having your emergency fund in place, these are like non-negotiable things that you need to do. You might have to put a stop to some of your lifestyle spending for a while, and cut back on things like vacations and stuff like that. And you have to really talk to your children about it. If your children are with you, you'll have to.
And if they're old enough to understand.
Well, even if they're 5 or 6 years old, I'm sure that you can have a conversation and make them understand as to why you are cutting back expenses and why you need to make some of these lifestyle changes.
Among those lifestyle changes, sometimes it's really hard to do because you're already in a situation where you are, there is a certain outgo of funds. In that situation, do you think that you need to make a very hard decision and say, look, I'm not going to be able to afford this. I need to move to something that's more affordable?
Yes, you do. I mean, because loans is not the way out. So, for example, if you're living in a 3-bedroom house, you might have to just put that on rent and rent a smaller house. Similarly, you'll have to just go through each and every expense that you have and see what you can do better. Obviously, you would not want to compromise on your child's school and all of that. But somewhere you will have to figure out what is it that you can really cut down on.
Okay. Going beyond the expenses, your goals tend to change a little bit in this situation. You're looking at retirement in a very different manner. How do you go about thinking about those things? Because, again, it's not an easy situation to be in.
So retirement planning is another non-negotiable thing that you need to do because you don't know whether you will have anyone to fall back on during retirement. So one, of course, as I said, your expenses, having the right amount of covers, the emergency cash, and you have to ensure that you're saving for retirement. Right.
So that's a lot of things to juggle at the same time. What takes precedence? Because on the one hand, you have children or a child that you need to provide for. You need to see to that child's education. On the other, you need to ensure that you're adequately covered for when you retire. So how do you decide what is more important?
So you have to create the right balance. You cannot. I have seen many cases where people really go overboard on children's education.
Okay.
Right. So they might be sending them to a fancy IB school. Well, maybe you have to have a rethink on that and say that I'm going to send my child to a school that's less expensive. That's one of. So it's really very hard decisions to take. Unfortunately, at a time when you're already dealing with a lot. But yes, you have to do this because you have to remember that you have to take care of yourself in the future. And I think one of the other things, Alex, is also, having your children in sync with you because, they need to understand what you're going through. And, maybe earlier you could have been in a situation where you could have sent them abroad for studies, but you're not going to be in that situation right now. And they need to understand that and they need to figure out then what they can do. So certainly if you have older children, let's say you have teenage children, you need to have conversations with them and you need to make them your support partners in this change that has happened.
Something that perhaps won't occur at that moment or in the near term, because I think a defense mechanism is to focus on the absolute present. You have to also identify how to change your accounts and the nature of your accounts to account for the people who are in your life right now. Is your children then become, part of everything that you're doing in terms of the wealth creation, in terms of inheritance, in terms of all of that. That's something that you need to do faster.
Absolutely. As soon as you have a change in your situation, you should firstly change the account holding, the nominees as well. Another thing that you need to think about very, very carefully is if I'm not there tomorrow, who's going to take care of my children? right? So whom are you going to entrust their responsibility to? Whom are you going to entrust the responsibility of your money if the children are minors? These are other things that you really need to think about as well.
Not just money, in terms
Yes.
of guardianship is also very important
Yes.
to do. All right, so this has been a short conversation, Mrin, but I think it's been a very insightful one, and hopefully it's one that has helped a lot of people out there.
Hope so, Alex. I know it's a difficult situation to be in, and what it really needs is for you to be really tough and for you to really ride through this difficult phase. Have your support around you, which is your children and your other family members, and get your children to be your partners in this journey together.
I must admit I was hesitant to pick up this topic. It's not the easiest topic to talk about, and I don't think a lot of people talk about it, which is why I ended up doing it. I'd like to thank you so much, Mrin, for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
All right, that's all we have for you in this BQ Big Decisions podcast, but I'd like to leave you with a message. If you're in this situation and if you need help with your finances, do write to us on portfolio@bloombergquint.com and we'll get a financial expert to help you with your finances. Thanks so much for listening. This is Alex Mathew signing off. Have a great day and an even better weekend.
If you enjoyed Big Decisions, check out some other podcasts on the IVM Podcast Network. You can check out Paisa Vaisa, hosted by Anupam Gupta, Advertising is Dead, hosted by Varun Dugirala, the Ronnie Screwwala podcast, hosted by Ronnie Screwwala, or Cyrus Says, hosted by Cyrus Procha. These shows are available on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Are you constantly seeking happiness? Wondering how to make the most of every day? How not to let your inhibitions stop you from achieving your goals? It's now time to get your A-game on. It's time to unlock your true potential. Tune in to the Empowering series with me, Zarina Poonawalla, to feel empowered in all genres of life. From behavioral skills to management skills. From health to relationships. From mental well-being to emotional well-being. And of course, your finances. I've got you covered. With these tips and tricks from me, Zarina, and true life stories from my amazing guests, you're bound to bring your purest to the table. Tune in to the Empowering series with Zarina Poonawalla every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.